Bring in show music, please.
This is Squawk Pod. I'm CNBC producer Zach Vallese. Today on the podcast, inside the unconventional, disruptive road to a new White House, a surprising pick for a key cabinet seat. Our Eamon Javers from the Florida transition.
I wonder how many Republicans have the stomach to stand up to Trump right now and stick their heads up out of their holes.
And we'll hear from an insider to the president-elect's thinking, 2017 inaugural committee chairman Tom Barrack, with insight on Trump 2.0's management and hiring style.
All I'm saying is let him be him. Just let's all get behind him for a moment. Retribution is not what he's interested in. He's interested in vindication.
Plus, the rest of today's news that got us squawking. And avatars at the anchor desk, get ready for AI Ross Sorkin.
This stuff is coming to a theater near you soon, if not now.
It's Thursday, November 14th. Squawk Pod begins right now.
Stand Becky by in 3, 2, 1. Cue, please.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Squawk Box right here on CNBC. We're live from the NASDAQ market site in Times Square. I'm Becky Quick, along with Joe Kernen and Andrew Ross Sorkin.
Now let's talk about the Trump transition and what I think is raising a lot of eyebrows. Controversial pick in Washington for the Attorney General role. Eamon Javers is with us. He's at West Palm Beach, Florida, after the president had left Washington, where all those eyebrows are being raised this morning and yesterday, and even the guy who drove me this morning. I walked in, I got in the car, and he looked at me, and he said, "Matt Gaetz." That was all that was said. That was all that was said, Eamon.
Yeah, you know, there are a lot of people saying Matt Gaetz down here in West Palm Beach, Florida as well, Andrew. President-elect Trump said Wednesday he's going to name the controversial Florida Republican congressman to be his attorney general and head the Department of Justice. Now, Gaetz has feuded with members of his own party in the House. He's been investigated by the Department of Justice for sex trafficking, an investigation that ended without charges. And he was investigated by the House Ethics Committee for allegedly showing members of Congress nude photos of women on his phone while on the House floor. Still, Trump called Gaetz a champion of the Constitution and the rule of law and said in a statement, "Matt will end weaponized government, protect our borders, dismantle criminal organizations, and restore Americans' badly shattered faith and confidence in the Justice Department." Gaetz is an economic populist and a supporter of at least some of the actions of Biden FTC Chair Lina Khan. Now, Gaetz filed a friend of the court brief in support of the Biden FTC's move this year to ban most corporate non-compete agreements and called that effort a vindication of economic freedom and free enterprise. The Biden FTC had expected the Trump DOJ to drop the court battle over the non-compete issue, but now a source there tells me that the mood is more optimistic that that measure, at least, will survive. Now, in another controversial nomination Wednesday, Trump also announced former Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard as his selection for Director of National Intelligence. Gabbard is a former Democrat turned Republican who was accused by Senator Mitt Romney and others of parroting Russian talking points in recent years. She's never worked in the intelligence world or served on a congressional intelligence committee. So that is another controversial choice, guys. Back over to you.
Eamon, so let's just talk about the implications of all of this and what this confirmation process may look like. We should probably also discuss that there was this report that was likely to come out.
We're going to vote on whether to bring it out in 2 days
for it to come out, but Congress had
the House
investigation,
House Ethics
investigation, whether that was going to come out, whether this is going to be a way to prevent that from coming out. And what this does more broadly to the questions about what the president-elect's plans ultimately are, the loyalty tests that appear to be taking place.
Yeah, look, I mean, the president-elect is installing loyalists at all of the top positions of power in Washington, D.C. So what he's doing here is consolidating power, and he's forcing some recalcitrant Republican senators to go along with him and vote for some of these nominees. Now, the question, I was texting back and forth with our Emily Wilkins about this yesterday, are there enough Republican senators who would defect on some of these nominees, like Pete Hegseth for the Department of Defense, a television anchor who's never worked at the Pentagon, Tulsi Gabbard, a controversial figure who's never worked in intelligence to run the Director of National Intelligence Office, or Matt Gaetz, somebody who's been under investigation by the DOJ to now run the DOJ. Those are lightning rod selections, but what Trump is doing here is pushing those Republicans to back his vision for Washington. Trump feels very strongly that the Department of Justice has been after him unfairly for years, and he wants to send somebody in there, as Steve Bannon said yesterday to NBC News, to take a blowtorch to the place, and that's what Matt Gaetz is going to do. So,
but he couldn't find a loyalist who hasn't been. I mean, he couldn't find a loyalist. We were talking about this before off camera. He couldn't find a loyalist who wasn't being investigated for having sex with minors and paying them for it.
Well, I'll tell you what. I mean, you rescue somebody from something like that, and it engenders even more loyalty, right? And you talk about the House ethics investigation. Matt Gaetz officially resigned from Congress yesterday, right after this announcement came out. So that ends the House ethics investigation. Typically, they don't release the materials from that investigation after a member of Congress has resigned. They just bury it. The question here is whether there are enough members on the ethics committee who want to vote to release it anyway, or whether somebody on the ethics committee, which usually doesn't leak, decides in this case they need to leak the material, whatever it is that they've discovered, because they've been investigating some very intense issues in the House Ethics Committee.
I saw at least one Republican say, "Yeah, we still need to see that." He was in Idaho, from the House.
There were questions among
and Susan
Republicans,
Collins and others saying that this has got to be totally vetted for that. But then I saw another Republican in the House, I think it was Thomas Massey, Eamon said to someone that it's a recess appointment. He's going to be Attorney General. Right. Deal with it. Yeah.
Well, that was the question. Is this going to be done through a recess appointment? I was looking to try to find out. I can only see one other example. President Dwight Eisenhower putting William Rogers, apparently, was for recess appointment.
Attorney General?
Which I was looking for an Attorney General who was put in this. I mean, this is a super powerful role. We were not joking about Kevin McCarthy, and I was saying maybe he's going to have to move out of the country. I mean, literally, when you start to think about where this goes, and it does raise. I mean, look, what surprises me about this is, for so much of the campaign, President-elect Trump was saying that he thought the Democrats had weaponized the system, and that's what he wanted to rid himself of. And what I fear now is that there are going to be people who are going to look at this and say that he's weaponizing the system.
Yeah. Look, Andrew, I don't think you need to necessarily look to history for precedent for anything here. I mean, I think the Trump team has been doing their research very carefully for 4 years about what the limits of executive power are, the extreme limits of executive power, and they're willing to push the envelope all the way there, even if it's unprecedented. Here's a hypothetical, for example. One thing that's never been tested in the U.S. constitutional system is whether or not the president has the power to adjourn the Congress and force a recess. It is in Article 2, Section 3 of the Constitution that the president has the power, in the case of a disagreement between the two houses of Congress, to force an adjournment and force effectively a recess of the Congress. But he would need Mike Johnson. That's never been done before.
He would need Mike Johnson.
Heritage Foundation has been doing some research on that.
Yeah, he would need Mike Johnson to go along with it to disagree with John Thu.
I mean, it was amazing yesterday.
And you saw Trump backing Johnson for Speaker, right?
Gaetz had some defenders. Some of the usual suspects. The Texas attorney Ken Paxton, Byron Donalds. Interesting. What this comes down to is, for me, two words: Jeff Sessions. That was the first senator to back Trump from Alabama, put him in as Attorney General for almost 2 years, was furious that he recused himself from the Russian hoax, and I think he's still thinking about that. And then I went back. I've lived a long time.
And the bottom line is Matt Gaetz will do as he's told.
Right. But others didn't, and John Mitchell, remember, he went to jail. He went to prison finally. Elliot Richardson had to resign during Watergate as AG. So it's
and then the most controversial pick prior to this would probably be JFK appointing his brother, RFK.
JFK appointing his brother,
as Attorney General.
Well, and then I also thought, and it doesn't mean that he's going to go all the way in. And we have seen presidents make some strange choices for really important positions. And I went back and looked at 2005. George W. Bush, Harriet Miers. She was like a lawyer that I think did some work for him on his real estate deal. Nominated her to the Supreme Court. Yeah, remember, that lasted, I think, 24 days. Right. She was actually White House counsel, probably a very good lawyer, but had never been a judge.
That was a totally different era, though,
No,
Joe.
it was, but I'm just saying, these people,
he never had the kind of control over the party that Donald Trump has now.
But to think that you can nominate someone to a position like that just because of whatever reason, and then it's just so beyond the pale that anyone's going to look at it and say, yeah, that seems normal. I just remembered that happened.
I wonder
and then you know who came in?
I wonder how many Republicans have the stomach to stand up to Trump right now and stick their heads up out of their holes in this situation. I mean, I just think Trump has a totally dominant victory in the Electoral College. Totally dominant in the party. He now has the Senate. He has the House. He has a very favorable Supreme Court. So if any of this stuff gets challenged to the Supreme Court, he's likely to survive there. He's got total legal immunity from the Supreme Court. I mean, he is as powerful a figure as we have ever seen in the White House in the United States of America.
And I will say this, and I just want to repeat one thing that a very prominent CEO said to me yesterday, which was, he said, you know, I don't know why you do this now so early in the
Maybe so you don't look
process.
at any of the other ones. Suddenly, Pete Hegseth and Tulsi Gabbard are like, yeah, you know.
No, but the whole idea was to heal the country. If you're going to be
shock and awe.
He's got a lot he wants to get accomplished.
He wants to get a lot accomplished. If he wants people to believe in the system, if he cares about his legacy, if all of the things that we talk, unless all of that was baloney. If all that was baloney,
but I do think what
then
Joe
we're
said
in a
is
different
right.
He wants the gut to Justice Department.
I think what Joe said is right. Jeff Sessions.
Yeah. Jeff Sessions. But the other thing is, you know who really, Eamon, you know who does the day-to-day operations of the Justice Department is the deputy AG. So that's who's going to be an important. But you're right. There's a lot of Trump thinks he can do whatever he wants at this point. There's no doubt. Yeah. There's no doubt. After
and he might be right. One point, don't miss the idea that Gaetz is a conservative, as in Lena Khan at the FTC, right? This is somebody who's very skeptical in terms of antitrust policy of where Republicans have been in the past. I think a Gaetz DOJ would sue American companies in a big way and force breakups and things that you might not expect from a Republican administration.
I had not heard that term before, conservative.
Yep, conservative.
Yeah, that was a thing going around a while back. Eamon Javers, thank you, sir. We'll be talking a lot more to you, I am sure.
The FBI seized the phone of the founder and CEO of Polymarket, 26-year-old Shayne Coplan. Polymarket is the crypto-based prediction market that was a popular platform for bets on the United States presidential election. Reports say that federal agents woke Coplan up at his Manhattan home early yesterday to carry out that search. It's not immediately clear what prompted the raid. The company, for its part, is tying that search to Polymarket's track record in the recent election, saying in part, this is obvious political retribution by the outgoing administration against Polymarket for providing a market that correctly called the 2024 presidential election. Coplan made light of the seizure on his phone on Twitter, saying, new phone, who dis? Here's what he told us last Thursday about his exchange predicting that election outcome.
People who were watching legacy media, hours later were like, oh, wow, Polymarket has Kamala so low. We were in the office and we were looking at the odds and on Polymarket, and it looked like a done deal. And if you were just watching TV, you would think it's neck and neck.
So that was his first ever television interview. We got to talk to him about some of these things. And I guess we'll see what happens.
There was other news out that I saw, and I don't have it in front of me right now, that the whale made a lot more than people thought. The
An extra $50 million.
$87 million, but
fell in France.
Right, the guy in France.
Teo is his name or something?
But he was sure that Trump was going to win. I don't know whether that means anything, that he made even more than we thought, other than he had a pretty good idea of what he believed. Right. And like I was saying yesterday, I mean, betting on sports is almost impossible. If you had a pretty good idea and you could double your money, if you were pretty sure of, I don't know, for whatever reason that you thought it was going to happen. It doesn't mean it's a illicit reason that you thought that necessarily, although it probably needs some scrutiny.
I think what's going to get complicated with all of this is, is there a level at which the inside information actually becomes a real issue? Maybe not with the election in this way. We don't know exactly what they want from his phone. Mm-hmm. What were the communications that he was having with others about where the results were, maybe than other people. I don't know, and I'm withholding judgment until we find out a lot more about the situation.
Let's say it was totally orchestrated all along to make it look like Trump was favored on the betting odds. Is that really what caused in a victory that big? I don't know if it had any influence necessarily on the eventual outcome.
Oh, you're raising the question of whether
it actually would have caused.
You would suggest that it would have some. Level of
maybe
of
I don't know,
something.
maybe.
I mean, otherwise, why do it?
If it was much closer than it was, it would be obviously much more concerning. But there was obviously a movement of some sort in the country that caused what was 7 states, the popular vote, House, and even some local legislatures flipped. It shouldn't have flipped. So it was more than just a betting market saying that Trump was going to win. That's all I'm saying. Do you think it influenced it?
I don't know.
There were times where it flipped a couple times where she was way ahead.
I think there's lots of things that influence an election.
Yep.
I think to suggest that I believe it's one component part.
Right.
And to suggest it's not a component part.
Unpredicted, a different betting said she was still ahead, I think, the day before or 2 days before. So it wasn't even everywhere that Trump was ahead.
Well,
and she had been ahead on Polymarket, handily ahead until the J.D. Vance.
If you wanted to turn around
debate.
and say that it didn't have an influence, you'd say that it was actually wrong about the popular vote.
Well, but when you say 30%, there's still, like we said, would you get on a plane that would had a 70% chance of landing? I mean, the 30% can come up a lot. I would not get on a plane that was 70% safe.
Cheese will be next.
Still to come, Tom Barrack, a financier and longtime friend of President-elect Trump. He chaired the first inaugural in 2017, faced criminal charges after that work, and he says Trump in 2024 is an all-new political athlete.
People used to say, why can't you just draw him back to the middle? Why can't he be reasonable? I said, he can absolutely be reasonable. He can absolutely go to the middle, but his instincts are saying that's not where America wants to be at the moment.
Squawk Pod will be right back. This is Squawk Pod from CNBC.
Donald, congratulations. Thank you very much. And politics is tough. Thank you all.
Here's Joe Kernen.
Here's Mike. Cue.
President-elect Trump at the White House yesterday, meeting with President Biden. Our next guest, longtime ally of President-elect Trump, and chaired the 2016 inaugural committee. 8 years ago. Joining us now in an exclusive interview is investor Tom Barrack, Colony Capital founder. It's good to have you on.
It's good to be back, and Becky's timeless. Nothing changes.
Good.
I love you, Tom.
What am I?
I didn't leave you out. I just didn't leave you in.
Love it.
Tom, I think one of the things we talked about off camera, were you more involved in the last Trump run and presidency than you have been this time? You've been longtime friends, obviously, with the president-elect, but I don't think you got involved this time till just a couple months ago. Is that a fact? Or, yeah,
no, absolutely, sure. In the 2016 process, none of us knew exactly what we were doing, right? I mean, the president-elect was marching down a road. I mean, think of it. People say he's a great political athlete. He's just a great athlete. To wander from business into politics with no background, no governing experience was tough. And he did a great job, but I was very involved then and kind of just chipping away at the system. I thought it was great to have a new warrior in the middle of it, just stirring things up. And he did the best job he possibly could that first term. Then we started this process of what people are calling corruption of the justice system. I don't think it's not corrupt. These people are not corrupt. Merrick Garland is not corrupt. He's accomplished, he's educated, he's pedigreed, he's trying to do the right thing, but the system is corroded. So underneath, if you have 94 political appointees who are U.S. attorneys, and by the way, these people are sensational, right? They're 30 to 40 years old, men and women come out of the elite law schools, pedigreed. Right. It's like a rugby game. So you have a political appointed attorney general who says, I have 10,000 felony laws. I'm going to enforce them in accordance with my political belief from the president that I have. So it's like a rugby game. It's horrible. It's rugged, but they're not corrupt. The system, the FBI reports to the DOJ. Everybody cooperates with everybody, and this is what President Trump found himself in. And I got frustrated watching it after my experience, and we talked about it before, at the end of the day, the system works for all of us. But in moments, it doesn't. So you have to allow it to play out. And in my case, after 2 years of serious litigation, a Brooklyn jury who's not a fan of President Trump, a brilliant judge who at every motion denied it for 2 years, I said, I'm going to go to Sing Sing for 40 years. This judge hates me. After 2 months of trial, one day comes back, complete adjudication. President Trump attacked. Everybody tried to kill him. Financially attacked, personally attacked, spiritually attacked. And the nation comes up with this incredible moment. So I came back to him because honestly, what I learned is his instincts are so good. They really are. And all of us get frustrated because we have points of view around the edge that it seems a little bit harsh, or it seems, for instance, on some of his appointments.
Right. So give us the take on Matt Gaetz. You said his instincts you think are great. A lot of people raising their eyebrows on the Matt Gaetz piece of this, right?
Right. Well, I mean, you take the whole scene. Who he's put in place up until now. Tulsi, by the way, who I know really well, is absolutely sensational. And you have a lot of people, and you have Rick Grinnell and Kash Patel and Bill Hagerty, all these great athletes still on the side. To shake up the Department of Justice, I mean, just think about it. That is an unbelievable undertaking, because the civil servants, so you have thousands of attorneys, thousands of FBI agents who also are not corrupt, but they see politicians come and go. So it's turn left, turn right, turn left, turn right.
But in terms of the trust or the distrust, right? I mean, part of this whole thing is about instilling trust in the system. Let's stipulate there's a lot of people who don't trust the system, in part because there was a worry about it was being weaponized by politicians, right? And so if we don't want that, and then there's a Matt Gaetz put in this place, the question is the perception, right? If half the country or more distrust this. By the way, I think more because there's other people even in the Republican Party who raise their eyebrows and say,
but does this make
really the right
country
person? Are there other people who could be loyal to the president, if you will, who might be more sensible and instill that semblance of trust and still be able to do the things you're talking about in terms of rooting out the corrosion?
Absolutely, and your analysis is exactly right. And you have to trust the president-elect's instincts. And I had this conversation with so many, living on either coast. At Halloween, I didn't have to put on a costume, right? I walk into a room, they freak out, right? There's nobody, I mean, Hollywood. I was not well received in those circles. And people used to say, why can't you just draw him back to the middle? Why can't he be reasonable? I said, he can absolutely be reasonable. He can absolutely go to the middle, but his instincts are saying that's not where America wants to be at the moment. He can draw back to that. It's the same with Matt. He has a plan, he has a reason, he has an overwhelming vote from the people to do what it is that he thinks is right. And all I'm saying is let him be him. Just let's all get behind him for a moment. He's not going to be, retribution is not what he's interested in. He's interested in vindication. And I think.
But so you don't think that if Matt Gaetz is in that role, it's a super powerful role. By the way, you lived through litigation of your own. I don't even know what that costs you. But, it was funny. I was having a conversation with my son last night. We were talking about this. And my son said, well, if the justice system works, we shouldn't have to worry. You shouldn't worry about this kind of thing. And I said, true, but you also don't want prosecutors unfairly prosecuting people because the cost is real. It is. You probably spent hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars.
You're speaking about what's already happened, or what you're worried about happening now?
Both.
Okay.
Let's stipulate
because
that.
I think that's Trump's whole reason for picking.
Right. But the question is, we're trying to root that out. Right.
You don't double down.
You don't double down, and that's the question I think about this piece.
But and you're so right. And by the way, it's millions. And this is the saddest thing, right? Is I say the system works. It works for people who have resources. By God's grace, by the way, we can say God, that's another fantastic thing at the moment, right? But by God's grace, my family had the resources to allow me to get through this. But normal people who are facing a felony, a federal felony, the conviction rate is 99.7%. they have to flip, right? Which is this whole system. All they want, you think they wanted me? What do they care about some Lebanese financial lawyer that was in private equity, right? It's not interesting to them. So you're exactly right. But I think sending a shock wave through that system, and I don't know, I can't speak for the president.
Right.
What I can say is he's not using up his political capital.
You think it's going to be a recess appointment? You think
Yes.
Gaetz is going to be, he's going to be Attorney General.
Well, and I don't know. Again, I'm not speaking for the
Is
president.
Deputy AG important, Tom? Who do you think should
Super.
get that?
And the third in place is even more important because you need somebody who understands the plumbing, right? When you go through all of the processes of how the FBI and special investigators and classified information works, prosecutors have the grand jury. The grand jury can indict a ham sandwich, as they've always said. The defendants have no rights. But the process of what you do with a civil servant, it's the civil servants.
I mean, I think about it. If you really wanted to de-weaponize things and make sure that people weren't worried about such things, you almost think President Trump saying, okay, we're going to pardon Hunter Biden, right? Shut things down and end the process. And it's not that there aren't things that you could definitely go after him for that he's probably guilty of. The question's always been, which cases do you pick and which do you not?
Absolutely, 1,000, and we're all ready to have it over, right? And by the way, President Biden, I know him personally. I adore him.
Biden's not going to do it.
I'm sad for everything that happened, and the greatest event besides President Trump being elected was seeing President-elect Trump and President Biden shaking hands with real smiles on their faces. Wow.
That was
That's
a lot
a
of people
moment.
talked about how real President Biden's smile was. I've never seen him
Right?
really. So it was
beautiful.
It was kind of surreal.
But Becky, those things are not out of the question.
He just didn't
right?
seem unhappy.
It's not out of the question. I
wondered who he
would
voted for.
anticipate, right?
I am. I'm not sure who he voted for. I'm not completely sure he voted for.
Yeah, because it was what an
Oh, I don't know about that. Let me ask you.
I'm not kidding.
Can we talk about Elon Musk?
Yes.
I'm so curious, as a business leader yourself and somebody who's been watching all of this, sort of what role you think he's ultimately going to have, what role he's had thus far in terms of maybe even being bigger than we know. There was a line in a story yesterday that said he was almost the quote-unquote co-president. How much influence he's going to be able to have in this sort of blue ribbon committee through either executive orders and the like, but then on the flip side, obviously there's going to be a lot of, I imagine, bigger issues that will have to get dealt with by Congress and the Senate and the like.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I look at it as a champion lion and a champion cheetah coming together, right? Elon Musk is, outside of the political arena, probably the most important innovator, creator, manufacturer, product creator. Think if you take Tesla, batteries, satellites, links in your brain, right? I mean, he single-handedly did more than NASA could do in 20 years. So he's thinking in a generation in a way that has to take us from bricks to bits. That's not the president-elect's main area. So in saying we have to move everybody's cheese, which he's done, right? How do these guys, they build a data center that takes 4 years and 18 days. So I think that focus, and it's not co-presidency. Nobody co-presidents with this president. We've learned that, right? I mean, it's his road, it's his path. The American
Do you
people
think they will be pals at the end of the 4 years?
Yes, I do. I think they respect each other in their own way.
Okay. Who do you want for Treasury?
Pardon me?
Who do you want for Treasury? Although we got to go.
Whoever the president picks.
Whoever the president picks.
I mean, you
Good answer.
have great candidates. You have Howard Lutnick, you have Scott Bessant, you have you have Bill Hagerty that could do it himself.
Yeah. All right. Tom, thank you very much.
No,
We got some
great
data
being
coming.
with
Thanks.
you.
Good to have you on.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Next on Squawk Pod, Artificial Andrew. An AI ARS on stage at a CNBC event.
I went on this AI journey with somebody else that I work with and look up to and that you all know, my good friend, David Faber. There he is.
And what it means for trust in what you see.
They can now do this with just about anybody.
Welcome back to Squawk Pod. CNBC's annual investor event Delivering Alpha was held in New York yesterday and featured an artificially created avatar of our own Andrew Ross Sorkin and CNBC colleague David Faber. And the impact? Well, hear it for yourself.
Hi, it's me, Andrew.
And I'm David. But don't call me Dave.
Good point. And never ever call me Andy.
Point taken.
So, this is us. Now avatars. Artificial intelligence. AI me is almost as good as Squawk Box me.
But let's be honest. Squawk Box you isn't nearly as good as Squawk Box me. Those were the golden years of Squawk.
David, even your avatar is cutthroat.
But here's the real question. Could AI Andrew cover for you the next time you oversleep?
I hope management isn't watching. It could be fun to trick them. Check this out. 이제 여러 언어를 말할 수 있어요.
That was what you just saw, folks. It was all AI. So there was no voice track. The video was not made. We didn't make this for this. So David and I, there's a company called Synthesia.
What's it called?
The company's called Synthesia.
Okay.
It's a unicorn. Big investors, including NVIDIA, in the company. They are working with corporations. About 60% of Fortune 500 companies are now clients of theirs. They are working with companies to create PowerPoints and other things. If you're a CEO, for example, and you want to give a speech or all hands to a global audience, you would record yourself once, potentially, and then they would do it in different languages. You could possibly not even record yourself once. You could even type out your script, never even show up, and do it.
But wait, you guys didn't type out a script. It did this for you.
Well, no. So in this case, what we did was David and I, and we did it separately. We weren't next to each other. We went to a studio. They filmed us, looking up and looking down, looking sideways, and this and that. They recorded our voice. So I had to read all sorts of different things. I had to read and sound sad and sound happy and sound this and sound that. And they did the same thing with David. And then the script, the script we typed.
Oh, you did write the script.
You typed it, but it was all typed, and then it just did that all by itself. There was no producers, there was no human intervention, and so you literally, if you decided you wanted me to read the news right now, I could be not me right now talking to you, and this could all have been typed. Though right now, that's not what happened.
Does this concern you like it does me? Like just the idea that they can now do this with just about anybody? Or do you?
Well, David and I were joking that for us, we had to actually sign releases.
You did?
About your likeness. For our particular use case, I'm hoping, we were both saying, we hope that our voice and our likeness will never be used in a different way.
But they made you sign paperwork that said that it could?
But the point was that, once I think if you were using this service, you have to allow the service to be able to use all of your.
But what happens if that gets out? I'm thinking of a CEO.
Sure.
Them having that get out, and then
correct.
The CEO says something that makes the market tank on the news.
Yes, but what's so fascinating about it was the technology for that to look as good as that did. Yeah. You had to do it in a studio. But the future of this, these guys are working on stuff where it could be done. Filmed on a phone.
But what CEO would sign off on saying, "Okay, I understand that my likeness if it gets out there, you're not."
Well, because what's even crazier about it is, I believe within a year or two, they can just take the video of you off the TV.
And this is
it will have nothing to do with.
As good as that. Well, this is like primitive compared to what it's going to be in a year or two.
Right, that's the point. And so it won't require, like whether you sign a release or not is almost besides the point, because you'll be able to just take a picture. There's now
I can't even fathom the terrible things that could happen.
There's an amazing AI tool that you can play with online right now where you can take an old picture. I actually did it with my grandfather, a photograph, and it will animate the photograph. It will make the photograph come to life. So a person who you may have never, and all of a sudden, and it was so real. So this stuff is coming to a theater near you soon, if not now. It's. You
think of the market implications.
It's out
you
there.
think of the government implications of what would happen during an election if you could have
totally.
that happen.
Can't wait to see you endorsing like J.D. Vance in 4 years.
By the way, there's
Hi, I'm Andrew Ross Sorkin.
By the way, we were just discussing it last week with the legal team. There's a video of me I don't know if I'm selling gold or I'm selling Bitcoin or I'm selling
Seriously?
something on. There's some social media company that's using, and I look like I'm doing. Looks like we're here at Squawk,
Right.
and I'm selling.
Well,
I don't know what I'm selling.
You'd be selling Bitcoin short. You wouldn't be selling Bitcoin.
Well, you should tell those folks whoever created this. But that's that's the danger of it.
Yeah.
The cool part should be that
when you're late, we can have you here anyway.
Well, that too, and hopefully that our show could be broadcast around the world in all sorts of languages, and we could be talking to everybody.
Yeah, but they don't
in
need
real
us
time.
anymore. Once you sign off on tape and say, okay, we've captured this. Bye-bye, we're done with you.
Well, this goes to the Al Michaels. You remember Al Michaels at the Olympics,
Right.
and they paid him for his voice. And so then there's a whole separate question about whether, incumbent brands win because people will buy into those brands that they know now, and whether it will be harder for younger folks to get into the business. I mean,
they're doing this in Hollywood. Glenn
things.
Close a few years ago talked to us about it on the show too, just saying how in Hollywood that's a really frightening thing, that you no longer control yourself, they control you, they don't need you anymore.
Would you be okay with sitting at home and not doing anything and getting the same paycheck?
Getting the same paycheck, sure, but they're not going to pay you the same when that happens.
To see video of AI Ross Sorkin, check out The Uncanny Valley with your own eyes. Go to our feed on X. We are at Squawk CNBC. You can find video clips there every day. Thank you for listening to Squawk Pod, our daily podcast taking you behind the sounds of CNBC's morning show. Squawk Box is hosted by Joe Kernen, Becky Quick, and Andrew Ross Sorkin. Tune in weekday mornings on CNBC at 6 Eastern. And follow Squawk Pod wherever you get your podcasts. We'll meet you back here tomorrow.
We are clear. Thanks, guys.